What if Genghis Khan had conquered the entire Europe? Genghis Khan, born Temujin in 1162 near the border of modern Mongolia and Siberia, was a warrior whose name became synonymous with conquest and empire building. By the early 13th century, he had united the disparate Mongol tribes into a formidable force, driven by a vision of global domination. His military campaigns were marked by unparalleled speed, strategy, and ruthlessness, forging an empire that stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea. By the time of his death in 1227, the Mongol Empire was already the largest contiguous land empire in history. But what if Genghis Khan had not stopped at the edges of Eastern Europe? What if, instead of turning his attention elsewhere or dying when he did, he had pressed westward and conquered the entirety of Europe? This alternate history explores the dramatic consequences of such a scenario, reshaping the medieval world and beyond. The Mongols were not merely raiders. They were nation builders who adapted to the cultures they subdued while imposing their own systems of governance and trade. By 1223, the Mongols had already made their presence felt in Europe during the Battle of the Kalka River, where they crushed a coalition of Rus's princes and Kipchak tribes. This incursion was a mere scouting mission compared to what could have followed. Had Genghis lived longer or directed his full might toward Europe, the continent, fragmented, feudal, and unprepared, might have fallen like dominoes under the hooves of Mongol cavalry. The state of Europe in the early 13th century. Europe in the 1220s was a patchwork of kingdoms, duchies, and city-states, loosely bound by the influence of the Catholic Church and the vestiges of the Holy Roman Empire. The continent was emerging from the Dark Ages, with trade and culture beginning to flourish, but its political unity was a mirage. The Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II was embroiled in conflicts with the papacy, while France and England were locked in their own dynastic struggles. The Iberian Peninsula was divided between Christian kingdoms and Muslim caliphates, and Eastern Europe was a collection of fledgling states like Poland and Hungary, vulnerable to external threats. This disunity would have been Genghis Khan's greatest advantage. Unlike the centralized empires of China or Persia, Europe lacked a coordinated defense. Armies were small, localized, and reliant on feudal levies, ill-equipped to face the Mongols' disciplined mobile forces. The Mongols' use of composite bows, light cavalry, and psychological warfare had already proven devastating in Asia. Europe's stone castles, while formidable against traditional sieges, would have been tested by Mongol ingenuity, including their adoption of gunpowder technology from China. The conquest begins. Eastern Europe falls. Imagine Genghis Khan in his late 50s but still vigorous, deciding after the Kalka River victory to commit fully to a European campaign. By 1225, his generals, Subutai and Jabi, masters of strategy, lead an invasion force of 100,000 horsemen into the Kievan Rus. The fragmented principalities collapse swiftly, their wooden fortifications no match for Mongol siege tactics. Kiev, a cultural and economic hub, burns as a warning to the west. With Eastern Europe as a staging ground, Genghis turns his gaze to the Kingdom of Hungary, a gateway to the continent's heart. In our timeline, the Mongols invaded Hungary in 1241 under Batu Khan, Genghis's grandson, and devastated the region before mysteriously withdrawing. In this alternate history, Genghis himself leads the charge in 1226. The Hungarian plains, ideal for cavalry, become a killing field. King Bela IV's forces, reliant on heavy knights, are outmaneuvered and slaughtered. By 1227, Hungary is a Mongol vassal, its survivors paying tribute in gold and horses. Poland follows, its armies shattered at a hypothetical Battle of Krakow, where Mongol feigned retreats lure the Poles into ambushes. The heart of Europe, the Holy Roman Empire and beyond. With Eastern Europe subdued, Genghis sets his sights on the Holy Roman Empire, a sprawling entity weakened by internal strife. Frederick II, a brilliant but distracted ruler, attempts to rally a coalition. However, the German princes, jealous of their autonomy, fail to unite effectively. The Mongols sweep through Bavaria and Saxony, using rivers like the Danube as supply lines. Cities like Vienna and Prague fall, their walls breached by trebuchets hurling flaming projectiles, a sight that terrifies medieval chroniclers. The Mongols' adaptability shines here. Learning from their Chinese campaigns, they employ engineers to dismantle European defenses while integrating captured soldiers into their ranks. By 1229, the Rhineland is in chaos, and the Low Countries, wealthy from trade, submit to avoid annihilation. France, under Louis VIII, mounts a desperate defense, but its feudal armies are no match for Mongol mobility. Paris, a growing intellectual center, is sacked in 1230. Its Notre Dame construction halted as resources are diverted to tribute. Southern Europe and the Mediterranean. Genghis, ever ambitious, does not stop at the Alps. Crossing into Italy, his forces exploit the rivalry between the papacy and the Holy Roman Empire. Pope Gregory IX calls for a crusade, but the response is tepid. European lords are too busy defending their own lands. Genoa and Venice, maritime powers, attempt to negotiate trade deals, but Mongol demands for submission prevail. Rome falls in 1232, a symbolic blow to Christendom. The Eternal City becomes a Mongol administrative hub, its churches repurposed as stables and storehouses. In Iberia, the Reconquista grinds to a halt as Christian and Muslim kingdoms alike face a common foe. Córdoba and Toledo fall by 1234, their libraries preserved by Mongol administrators who value knowledge. Genghis, now in his 70s, oversees a campaign that unites the peninsula under his banner, ending centuries of religious conflict with an iron fist. The Mediterranean becomes a Mongol lake, its trade routes feeding the empire's coffers. The British Isles, the final frontier. Crossing the English Channel poses a challenge, as the Mongols lack a strong navy. However, Genghis, drawing on his experience subduing coastal regions in China, commissions a fleet from captured ports like Bruges and Calais. By 1236, a Mongol armada, crude but effective, lands in Kent. England, under Henry III, is unprepared. London falls after a brief siege, its wooden defenses no match for Mongol fire tactics. Ireland and Scotland, lacking centralized rule, succumb by 1238, completing Genghis's conquest of Europe. A new order, the Mongol yoke on Europe. With Europe under Mongol control, Genghis establishes a system modeled on his Asian empire. Local rulers are retained as vassals, swearing fealty and paying tribute in goods and soldiers. The Pax Mongolica, a period of enforced peace and trade, extends across the continent. The Silk Road now reaches Lisbon, connecting Europe to Asia in an unprecedented network. Mongol garrisons dot the landscape, from Dublin to Constantinople, conquered in a subsequent campaign, ensuring compliance. Culturally, the impact is profound. Christianity, while not eradicated, loses its dominance as Mongol tolerance allows Islam, Judaism, and paganism to flourish. The Church's political power wanes, hastening a secular shift. European scholars, exposed to Chinese and Persian texts via Mongol libraries, spark an early renaissance. Technologies like printing and gunpowder spread faster, altering warfare and literacy. Yet the cost is immense. Millions die in the conquests, and cities lie in ruins before rebuilding under Mongol oversight. Long-term consequences. Genghis's death, perhaps in 1240 after consolidating his European empire, does not fracture his legacy as it did in our timeline. His successors, trained in his vision, maintain unity. The Mongol Empire, spanning Eurasia, becomes a superpower unrivaled until the modern era. Europe's feudal system dissolves, replaced by a centralized bureaucracy. The Americas, discovered later by a Mongol-influenced Europe, face a different colonization, perhaps more organized, less chaotic. The absence of a fragmented Europe alters history's trajectory. No 100 Years' War, no rise of nation-states as we know them. Instead, a Eurasian civilization emerges, blending East and West. The Black Death, if it arrives, spreads differently under Mongol quarantine measures, potentially reducing its toll. By the 15th century, this alternate world is a tapestry of Mongol-descended Khanates, each a fusion of local and steppe traditions. And so, the question of what if Genghis Khan had conquered the entire Europe unveils a world both alien and familiar, a continent reshaped by the will of one man and his unstoppable horde. The medieval era, as we understand it, would vanish, replaced by a Mongol-dominated epic of unity, destruction, and reinvention. If this journey through an alternate history intrigued you, consider liking this piece and subscribing for more explorations into the what-ifs of our past. Until next time, ponder the threads of fate that weave our reality, and how easily they might have unraveled differently.